All right, so how long a time coming is this?
Well, you came to my show in Ireland, and then you said, I want to interview you. I said, hopefully. And then we've been speaking since.
You know, when I first put a request in for you, I went back and looked at my email last night.
When?
2015.
Who did you put it in through?
Alan Berger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that how I met you? Was through Alan?
No, so we missed each other in Davos, 2019.
Right.
World Economic Forum. I DM you on Instagram. You probably regrettably gave me your number.
Right.
And you
Not
endured.
Not regrettably.
You endured.
But not regrettably at all. I wanted to do the interview with you. I just wanted it to be time appropriate. So
we had. I remember that you kindly, went out to lunch with me in New York. Show in Europe. Got together with you after that. Lunch in Santa Monica. I remember thinking, like, this is going to be piece of cake.
I only do interviews with good friends, so I need at least 4.
I'm like, this is going to be piece of cake. We're definitely going to get this taping. And legitimately, probably one of the more difficult bookings we've ever had in the history of the show. I even had Tom Hanks tape a question or tape something for you. I'm
great.
Like, this is done deal. Tom Hanks did it.
I love him. Like I said, I told you I would. I just said I don't know when. But this is the timing for me now is almost perfect. In 3 months from now would be absolutely perfect. But this
why 3 months from now?
No, just because I'll be closer to dialing in what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily like these sorts of interviews, though, right?
Well, I mean, it's not that I don't like that. I like them. It's just I'm not. My strength, I feel like, is more based on doing magic as opposed to talking, So I rarely like to go out there and talk too much, but I did a TED Talk, which was very difficult, jumping into the fire pit, and I did it without magic, just speaking, and that was kind of the first time that I did a talk where I had no magic to stand behind.
And how did you feel about that?
It was very hard, and I was very awkward and stuttery, but it was nice to work on a talk, so it was interesting.
Towards the end of it, you got a little emotional.
Because everybody thinks when I do magic that relates to the endurance. So everybody always thinks that I'm cheating or it's a trick or something like that. So when I finally put it all together as one coherent thought and worked on it diligently for a long time. By the way, Richard Werman was the one that asked me to do that, and he had asked me to do that for 17 years.
Really?
Yeah. So he trumps you on how long it took for me to feel comfortable to do it.
I was going to say,
But I was like, no, I'll show up and I'll do magic to everyone. So every year I showed up and did magic, and finally one year it was my brother's birthday, right on the day that I did the talk or during the conference. And my brother wanted to meet David Pogue, who was a New York Times writer, and I said, okay, if I come and do this, can my brother join? And he was like, sure, and we'll all do a happy birthday thing for him. I was like, oh, perfect, then I'm in. And then I worked day and night forever on that talk.
Did you?
Months, yeah, day and night. I didn't even watch one thing during that conference because I was just studying all the notes of what I needed to remember, and then I converted it to bullet points, so it was great. But in retrospect, most of the people that are close to me, they like that talk because they feel it's very honest.
What are the nerves going into something like that, given that it's out of your comfort zone?
Well, that's another thing that's very interesting. So when I was trying to figure out how to do this this is my first public talk without, like I said, without hiding behind the magic tricks. So I started reading all of the books on public speaking, Dale Carnegie and all the different books. I would go to the different bookstores and just take every book on public speaking. And the first thing that was a really interesting approach, by the way, was learning why we're afraid to public speak. I'm not afraid to go in a white sharks in the ocean with no cage on, but public speaking, I was very uncomfortable, very nervous to do it.
Still?
No. I put myself in the boiling pit. But once you understand the psychology of why we're afraid to public speak, it becomes really interesting. So do you know
No.
What would be your first thought?
I mean, you don't want to mess up. All eyes are on you doing something
What's the problem with all eyes on you?
Self-conscious, uncomfortable.
So during one of the sifting through all the books, one of the things I found in the public speaking book was really interesting. And it says the reason that we're so uncomfortable public speaking is because when all eyes are on you, if you go back a million years and you think about every eye on you, it's somebody that's a predator or wants to hunt you. So having all the eyes on you while you're on an open plateau and you're elevated, you're in a place of extreme danger if you go back. So the evolution of the brain hadn't changed that much. So we still, even though we're now not in a dangerous place to be on a stage, we're wired to have that fear of being hunted or being chased by a predator. So the idea of public speaking being something that you're afraid of because of something you think is present in your brain now, it's not. It's from hard wiring of what we used to need to do, which was hide in caves and stay together. And if you were out in the open and all the eyes were looking at you, you are very vulnerable. Once I started to process that, then I started to accept it. And then once you accept it, then the fear starts to change. And then what I did is after the TED Talk, which like I said, for 17 years, Richard Werman, who started TED, asked me to keep doing it. I said, no, I'll do card tricks to people. But after, and by the way, in the audience was lots of my favorite people, in the world, right? Like people I admired or looked up to. So I was extremely nervous, like Steve Wozniak, this and that. So, Craig Venter, all those guys.
Pressure's on. Yeah.
Right, so after that talk, I went with Washington Speakers Bureau and I had them just book me to do talks. And I started doing, 10,000 people, and I would go up on stage and I would not even prepare. I would just go up and I would just wing it. And most of the time it was terrible because it would hit like 1 in 10 or so. Yeah. But it really started to make me comfortable with the process. And like I said, I grew up, I went to PS 230 public school in Brooklyn in 1981 or 2 or something. I was at PS 230. Then I moved to New Jersey and went to public school in Jersey, in Totowa, and then I went to Passaic Valley. And in all these schools, they never had me get up and present or speak. And it's like, I feel like that should be required. I feel like all schools should make kids stand up in front of kids, because it took me so long to get over that hurdle, Yeah. Anyway, that's my, sorry for that run-up.
I want to take you back to what I think's your big break. Take me into the office with then ABC Entertainment Chairman Ted Harbert.
Ted was amazing. So Alan Berger, in 1993, I think, I showed him a video that I shot where I'm doing magic to people on the streets. Do me a favor, write your name on the face of it also.
Here?
The idea was all different walks of life, all different ethnicities, all different age groups, every combination I could come up with. I literally walked around New York City for 2 days and found just amazing people, did magic, and edited it together with 2 VCRs. Then I showed Alan Berger, and back then, he said, yeah, but this doesn't work on TV. It's great, but this concept doesn't work on TV. And that was a day of World's Greatest Magic Specials and all those big illusion shows.
And Alan, by the way, is one of the biggest agents out there.
He's an incredible agent. And I've been with him this whole time. So he said, yeah, it's great, but you can't put this on TV, it doesn't really work. And it was just great reactions to card tricks, and that really didn't exist at the time on TV. And he flew back home, and he said that he fell asleep that night and kept dreaming about the concept. So then he called me, called Johnny, my agent at the time at ICM. He said, why don't we send him out to go meet the different heads of the networks? So Ted Harbert was first, he was the president of ABC, and I showed him the tape, I did some magic to him in the room. Then I stepped outside and did a trick with him over the phone, and when I was leaving the meeting, he called Alan, and he said, what do we have to do to keep him from going to any other networks? And I had met Spike Lee and done magic to him at something before that, and I said, one day if I do commercials, will you direct them? And he's like, sure. So I said, I want Spike Lee to do the commercials, and Ted said, okay, and Johnny said, we want this, we want that. And I said, I'd like to have the final product. He said, sure. And that was the first TV special. And then I spent the entire budget while living in my friend's pantry room. I spent every penny to make that show.
Really?
Yeah.
So I don't know Ted well, but I've met him before, and he actually texted me something for you.
Great.
David, the first time I met you, when Alan Berger brought you to my office at ABC, I think it's 1993 or something crazy like that, you did a bunch of tricks in my office that blew me away. But then you went outside my office to my assistant's office and on the phone did another trick where you got the card. David has kept me up for 20 years now, 30 years. Oh my God, 30 years. I know you're not going to tell me how you did it. Is it a math thing? It keeps me up at night. Is it a math thing?
That's really funny. Yeah, that was Ted. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time you have pretty much no money in all of a sudden.
I used that plus my fee to make the show.
Right,
so still no money, still living in my friend's pantry room, but I had my first TV show.
But it had to be crazy walking out of there with that deal, right? And I think the first installment was like $375,000 check or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally the whole thing just funneled. And then what I did is I hooked up with Stephen Chow. He was the CEO of Fox. He created Cops. He put America's Most Wanted on the air. But so every magic show, like I said, was one direction. I started thinking the opposite direction. So if you take magic and you put it in rough, real environments and different environments and show the diversity of people and show the beauty of their reactions, then that's really interesting, more than the tricks that people know. It's an illusion or it's this and that. So that was the beginning of that process, and luckily I found Stephen, and we worked every day almost for a year to make 44 minutes of TV. And that's, by the way, why I'm at such a crossroads right now. It's because that's how I started working, was you put everything you have into making really good content. So you work forever to do it. And now it's about just turnaround, because there's so many different channels and outlets for content, or YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, and Facebook, so my brain, I never understood. That process is really complicated for me.
So how are you navigating that?
I haven't been. I'm terrible at it.
I mean, is that good or bad, or time will tell?
I should probably figure it out. I do love that idea of 15 seconds and tell the whole story. I think it's great and quick and fun. But yeah, the way I built everything was the opposite of that. So the way I built everything is shoot for a year and you make 44 minutes. Now it's you shoot all day, every day, and you turn content right away.
You also, though, own, I believe, all or most of your content,
I've kept ownership.
To your credit, which you can also put out.
But what I'm saying is what people like now, the brain set, which that other way is antiquated. They want now. They want real time now, and this is it. It's so different from the way I think about magic and TV and editing and all of that.
We'll move on from this in a moment, but that first special you did, because we were talking about this before we started, you're a young kid, get your big break. The reaction to that among your peer group, people gave you a bit of a hard time. I'm curious, how that impacted you.
Magicians didn't know that I was heavy into magic growing up, so when they saw the magicians that knew, and they thought it was great for magic right away. But the guys that didn't know, they're like, well, he's doing the most basic tricks and putting those on TV. Anybody can do that. And in my head, yeah, of course, I've always loved doing the complicated, difficult stuff. But to make really good TV, it is that show the trick, show the reaction. So it was like kind of, speeding up the way magic was done previously. And like I said, now it's like you don't even have time. It's like show the trick, show the reaction, and you're out. And it's like super. But back then it was kind of like, if you could do it in 1 minute, that's amazing.
When you look back today, 20, 25 years later, on kind of those early specials, what's your reaction?
Oh, it's so hard for me to watch anything of myself without critiquing it. Yeah. Yeah, anything that I watch myself, I just see the flaws. I'm like, I wish I did this. So it's hard.
Why did you study acting briefly early on?
Well, first of all, there was no such thing as succeeding at magic by doing magic on TV like that. So that was part one. So I loved movies and I loved acting. And the other thing is there was a quote, which is actually from Robert Houdin, who's Houdini took his name from, but Orson Welles uses this quote and it says, a magician is just an actor playing the part of a magician. So when I studied, I went to the neighborhood playhouse and I had this amazing coach, his name was Richard Pinter. And I would do magic on stage in front of the class. I was 18 years old. And he would say, David, really read that, like the trick, the pattern on the, and when I actually read it, it's just so ridiculous, the pattern, that I would break into tears of laughter, crying. And that kind of made me realize that if a magician, if a magician really existed and he could do something like pick this up and change it, he wouldn't really have a complete pattern or presentation. He might just take it and change it. So I took everything off of the presentation of it and kind of, luckily through that discovery, put it on the reaction. So yeah, it was the most valuable learning curve probably in my presentation of magic.
Really?
Yeah.
And how long a period of time was that?
It was a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you remember from the Prospect Park librarian who gave you the magic book?
She walked me through a self-working trick when I was a kid in Brooklyn at the library, which was right by my house. And I used to take the subway from home, sometimes alone when I was like 6, 7 years old. And
Which is amazing, by the way.
But my mother taught me very carefully, here's where you go, and it was during rush hour, so it's not like nighttime. So I'd take the subway 2 stops, get off, go to PS 230, then I'd get back on the subway, get off, and then right next to where we lived was a Prospect Park Library. And I would go there, and I always had a deck of cards in my hands. So one librarian walked me through a very simple self-working magic trick, and that was kind of like the beginning of me starting to perform, I guess. And then my mother came and I would do the trick to her and then she would go crazy. And then I also found a picture. Can we grab that little stack of pictures that's right there? The getting into magic is a really complicated thing. So here's something I found, which I thought was really funny. So this is me and my friend Isaac watching a magician doing a string trick at Coney Island. And I have the Coney Island Aquarium shirt on. So that's my first time watching somebody doing magic.
How old do you think you are there?
Well, here, this picture, this is me and him. So this is us two. This is at PS 230, that says 81.
Yeah.
So I would guess this is before that, because we look younger. So I'd guess, my guess is 5,
Well,
maybe.
and
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And then what happened was Isaac, we both, went to the same school, came from the same area in Brooklyn, but he had a relative that gave him a classic trick, but my mom couldn't afford to buy tricks for me. So it was like one deck of cards was it. Luckily, because that's why I had to work on and learn things. But Isaac's uncle or grandfather gave him a special magic trick with 2 coins. And Isaac couldn't figure out how to do it. I remember I took it and immediately I was able to do the trick. And then I was able to do it to him and to his mom, and everybody, was like, whoa. So Isaac's like, wow, you can really do magic. But I was just, I think early on I had a knack for understanding the magic tricks.
And I think you went to magic camp, later went back as a counselor. At 10 years old, I believe you were, you win a Long Island magic competition.
Sorry, there's also a magazine there. So, this is, But they ran the picture, I think, a year later. So I think this picture is from '84, I think.
Okay.
So I would have been 11, actually. But this is me as a young magician. So that's me as I guess a 10-year-old or 11-year-old.
And this is that Long Island competition.
Yeah, that was, which my great aunt paid for, which was really nice to send me to the camp. So
How much does that build your confidence?
some of the older counselors, like Johnny Ace Palmer, some of the older counselors that were there, like really sat with me and really helped me learn and present magic tricks. And then I would add my ideas to it. But what it was learning to work with a team and learning to hang out with people that inspire you. So hanging out with magicians that inspired me that was my whole life. It's still tonight, a magician's landing from Germany who's gonna stay here while I'm gone, but I'll see him tonight. And just my life is really absorbed with spending time with magicians that are inspiring, amazing, and that's most of my growth in magic is through that.
And how so?
You bounce ideas, you play. I mean, a lot of it is a performance, but much inspiration comes from spending time with guys that I find amazing.
And so you start performing at upscale restaurants, or doing tricks at upscale restaurants
when I was
that
like
later
17, 18, 19, yeah.
you occasionally then start getting hired to do parties. I think one of the early ones was by Diane von Furstenberg. How much did that and the kind of A-list type parties kind of help, early on?
It taught me early on that you can see what makes somebody amazing, and it's not what they have around them, it's who they are inside. And for some reason, magic really, in a streamlined way, it really gets to the person's core. So it's like the person's core has nothing to do with all the things that you think are important. The person's core is who they are. And I also think everybody has an incredible core, even if it's been tainted or they've been through a really rough, but I still think at the core of everybody, there's just a human soul and heart and blah, blah, blah.
How did the Steinert family impact you?
Steiner?
Yeah.
Amazing. I was doing magic at a party. He brought me to the south of France to do magic at his house. I was supposed to stay for a week, ended up staying for the whole summer.
And you're how old at this time?
I think I was 19. They gave me heavy, fast culture and brought me everywhere, and I learned quickly. And also the way Jeffrey was really interesting. He was an early billionaire, and he was very powerful and very incredible. But the way he spoke was he would speak quietly, but have such a strong command that people would edge in to listen. I think I watched him and absorbed and learned a lot fast. What I learned from him was anybody is capable of achieving anything, and don't judge anybody. He took me, I was a kid doing magic at a bar mitzvah, and he was like, here, come spend the summer with me and my family. And there was no reason for him. And he was just so good to everybody. And I think, like I said, I learned quickly just how to interact with all different groups fast and early.
Tell about running into Jack Nicholson at a club.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd be out and I'd run into all these people that I, watched repetitively, Cuckoo's Nest over and over. They'd say, they'd announce that I was doing magic there to Jack, and then it would be really cool. So it was young and amazing.
What's the deal with you and knocking on wood?
Oh yeah, it was superstitious, Jewish maybe. Superstition runs in the blood. Yeah, so I get really crazy with all that stuff. And when I'm training to do something, I start to get really insane about it. Like I'll stop the motorcycle and jump off and knock on a tree really fast, and then jump back on the bike. Yeah, so it almost becomes overwhelming. There's a Yoda out here, and the reason the Yoda is here is because my mother used to love Yoda. We watched Star Wars when I was 5, and that was her favorite character. And before I did the Oprah breath hold, I was living on 11th Street, and I had this office. And I see this Yoda, and I have to leave to go do the breath hold the next morning to go to Chicago, and I'm doing the breath hold the same day. And it's late, but that store next to the Strand on 11th Broadway, it was like a comic book store. And I see Yoda in the window, and I'm like, oh wait, I need that Yoda to be able to do the breath hold. And not, no, because it's easy to crack on the breath hold, right? So my mom, Yoda, connected. And I'm like, I need this thing. So I buy the Yoda, but now it won't fit in a taxi because the arms are so outstretched, pre-Uber days. So I have to carry Yoda from 11th Street to here. Well, I should be, resting and getting ready to do the breath hold on Oprah. But my point is my superstition made me think that I needed Yoda.
Do you think the superstitions in any way become detrimental to everyday life?
I think superstitions in a weird way are important because I think it just shows your dedication to what you're trying to do. For example, when I'm running on a treadmill, let's say I decide I'm going to do a 5K. So I won't stop at the 3.1. I'll have to go to the 3.2, and then I'm like, wait, well, I might as well just go to the 3.5. So that mentality, which is based on, the idea of like, it starts with the superstition, but it's like push further, I think that translates in when you're trying to do something like hold your breath for 17 minutes.
You said somewhere, in my work, I have extreme self-discipline. In my life, I have none.
It's true, and I think it's like you go from one extreme to the other. So it's like right now I haven't started the training, I'm procrastinating, I'm currently 25 plus pounds overweight. I need to get back in the other mindset so I can start putting the show in Vegas together safely. But I'm also that last minute person. I wait until the last possible second, and then I'm like, okay, I have 76 days until the show. That gives me 2.5 pounds per week, which means I'll be able to safely lose, let's call it 23 pounds, and whatever the math is, and then, okay, I'll be there just in time.
Always been a procrastinator?
I think I work best under pressure. I think that's my thing. I think growing up with a single mother in Brooklyn and spending our first, 9 years like that, where I was kind of in charge until she got remarried, and then things changed, obviously. But up till then, I was like, let's wing it and get it done.
So speaking of your mom getting remarried, you move to the suburbs in New Jersey.
We moved to a little town called Totowa, which is on the border of Patterson.
Okay.
And we lived in the top floor of a house, right on the border, which was great. And I went to Washington Park School, where my best friend that became my best friend when I was 10, Jimmy, who's there now, who I just saw, that just had a baby, I'm the godfather. So I just went there with my daughter to go visit him the other day. Yeah, so we started in Totowa, then I moved to Little Falls, and I went to Passaic Valley High School, which was, for me, it was great because I surrounded with a different type of kid. So it wasn't like the kids that I grew up in Brooklyn with. It was like a different type of thing. These were, ironically, these kids were all like really tough. So it's like I learned a lot fast.
I read your days often ended in fights or crying. Truth to that?
Yeah, sure. But I think that, I think that happens. I think those things.
But that's not fun.
Well, I think
when
it's
you're
also.
in
I
it,
think it's also tricky because, I'm lucky because I have a brother that's amazing. And
the role he plays in your life is what?
My brother?
Yeah.
He's incredible, and he's just an amazing guy. My mother, I think, married, and we moved to New Jersey, and I think they didn't exactly get along, and I think I was I think I was more like, who's this kid coming into my space, this crazy kid that's into magic and into so it was, I think it was a struggle, but in retrospect, I think that struggle was the most valuable. That's what makes you. And that's what also drives you. So it's, like I said, when things are comfortable, I have very little, I might just not even leave the apartment. But when things are tough and they're difficult, that's when I'm alive. And that's also when I feel the most creative, that's when I work the most. So I do believe that comfort does, in most cases, in my case at least, puts a complete damper in being creative or getting anything done. So it's the opposite of achievement.
What did you think of your stepdad?
I think he's my brother's dad, so I think he's a great guy. He's just from age 10 to 18, I lived under his roof, and that was very nice that he allowed that to be. But, I think you take opposite ends of the spectrum and put them into the same environment. I think there's always going to be that clash,
How do you view your dad today?
Why, my biological father, he overdosed on heroin and died. So I never really knew him. I knew he gave my mother a really tough time. So I just found a picture of him, actually. Maybe I'll show it to you even.
How did you find it?
Well, I was going through to find these things. I just found a one-off picture. So, yeah, it's sad that he had such a difficult life, but he was in Vietnam and he didn't sign up to go. He was drafted, and it's either you go to jail or you go to Vietnam. And I think the only way you get people to just point their guns and shoot people that for no reason is, in many cases, such as my biological father, they started taking AAA grade morphine, right? They would raid infirmaries, and then they got back to New York. My mother had waited for him, and he was now hooked on heroin, So I think it's tough.
And he saw some horrific stuff over there, right?
Yeah. He saw his best friend get gutted alive while hanging from a tree in front of him and things like that, so, yeah.
And would have these nightmares when he came back home?
Yeah, horrific, yeah. So my mother had a very difficult life, but it also made her the most amazing, teacher. She cared for, she was incredible. It was the biggest blessing was to have a mom like that. And
what did he say to her a few days before she's due with you?
When she told him that she was pregnant, he just disappeared. So she didn't see him until the day that I was born, and one of her friends said that my mom's having a tough time in the hospital, you should go say something, because she knew him. And he went to the hospital, looked there, said, I don't love you anymore, I love another woman, goodbye. So, and my mother already had the craziest life to begin with.
Really?
So, yeah, but because it was just me and her, she put everything into her boy. So,
and I'm going to ask you about her in a sec, but he ends up coming back at some point and takes a swing at her, right?
Yeah, well, she said he used to have nightmares and from the war, and he would just react, and it became violent. So I don't know the details, obviously, but I've heard terrible stories.
What was the situation where, and I found this remarkable, that you're a kid and there's a board between two windows,
it
10
wasn't
stories
exactly
up.
like he just threw me on it and said walk. I think he was holding me tightly, but I think he was teaching me, like, you don't need to have fear. So I don't think it was his reckless way of doing it. I was just so little, but it might have worked. Because my friends all say that I was never afraid of things that were, I would fall off of the edge of like cliffs when I was little and land it and stuff. So maybe that whole psychology of him teaching me not to be afraid, because he was probably so traumatized and so afraid in war. So but I was a kid, so in retrospect, if somebody throws something this way and it's going there, you still remember it as coming right at you, right?
Yeah. Are there other things like that come to mind that you actually think that have
there's
helped?
lots, yeah. There's lots of those things. But we didn't live with him, so I just saw him every now and then. One time he was smoking and he burnt the apartment down. We had to run over the. And I was also in lots of fires growing up, by the way.
Well, lots of your apartments burned down, right?
Yeah, I was in a bunch of fires. By the way, another story is I was at a wrestling camp when I was 11 in Pennsylvania, and we were all on a plateau between, and so there was a rubber mat with a cover and open, but everybody was told to go stand on that mat. And I just stayed out in the open field during the rain, and a lightning bolt hit, not me, but you could see it, and it hit the field that I was standing on, but far away. But the electricity came into me, and my hair all stood on edge, and I was blinded for a minute plus. I couldn't see, and I'm like, I can't see. I was running in circles. So that's kind of a crazy story.
Yeah, for sure. To close out the dad stuff, you ran into him later in life.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times, and a cop called me, said, you're next of kin, your biological father is dead, he overdosed on heroin. And that was that.
What was your reaction?
I didn't know him very much, so my reaction was, I was protective of my mother. So, so when you have one side of a story, you don't really, the other side is, so, yeah.
But it still touches you.
I think he had a tough life, I knew him very little. I think I met him 3 or 4 times in my whole life, something like that. So I didn't know. Now my mother, also I have a godfather who's still in my life. This is my mom, by the way. This is her, she was amazing. This is my great aunt that paid for the magic camp. Oh, this is my mother. This is something really funny you asked me about, like my acting. That was like my headshot.
Oh, by the way, why you change from David White to David Blaine? I mean, Blaine was your middle name. Yeah.
Yeah, Blaine was always my middle name. So I was David Perez, David White, David Bucalo, I had so many different last names that eventually Blaine was always the middle name. So when I was 18, the first thing I did is I went straight to the whatever you had to do to change your name legally to David Blaine and went back to just David Blaine. So I had so many different last names. I'll show you some of those things too. Yeah. What was I looking? Oh, yeah, this was my godfather, so it's him. This is him teaching me chess when I was like 4. He took me to Puerto Rico.
And he played a big role?
I think, yes, he was great. And him taking me to Puerto Rico and teaching me chess was very important as a kid. Because chess is a game where you have to think ahead, and magic's very similar.
When it was you, your mom, your brother, toughest time financially would have been when?
I mean, it was always tough, you know. It was never, like, but no, the toughest time financially would be Brooklyn. When she got remarried, it was tough, but not like, you're hungry some days. It was safe in that sense. So.
Describe what it was like when you were in Brooklyn.
My mother was very health conscious, so she would buy a huge bag of brown rice, a huge thing of oatmeal. She'd have kale. We'd have all those healthy, nutritious things, but it was a single mother working multiple jobs, and so yeah, we were, didn't have much. When we were walking to school, we'd walk across the street. She didn't want to go past the toy store or anything that she wouldn't be able to ever get. One time I remember I was asked to go to school. It was raining, and I said, Mom, there's money. It was raining really hard, and I picked up a $20 bill off the street, but she thought it was just probably a penny and that we were late. And I remember when I pulled the 20 up, she saw it, and we both started jumping up and down and hugging each other, and we were so excited and so happy. And then that day when we came back from school, she walked me right to that toy store, and with the $20, I picked out a Spider-Man doll, I believe.
What did she do to make ends meet?
Worked multiple jobs, waitress, school teacher. And then she'd send me away the whole summer so she could work and do whatever. So I'd go to those like Camp Friendships, those programs where they take inner city kids and bring them up to this really pretty place. And there, I think also, now that I think about it, I was in those magic programs at summer camp when I was like 6, 7, 8.
How would you kind of best explain the role she played in your life?
Just the most amazing, inspiring. She would read to me always. She'd take me to museums. She'd take me to libraries. She was very loving, very affectionate, and never critical, never judged anybody. Had very little, but would be the first one to take her coat off and give it to a homeless woman in the park, in Prospect Park. And she was incredible.
I read somewhere that you were considering going to college, but then she got sick with ovarian cancer.
She wanted me to go, yeah. She always dreamed of me going, to a great school. But when she got sick with cancer, that wasn't an option. I wanted to just succeed so I could help take care of her and stuff like that, yeah.
What was it about what you read in her journals that
The journals are unbelievable.
impacted you kind of at the tail end of her life?
Her whole life is just, it's mind-blowing. Starting with her childhood, growing up the way she did. She grew up from a very wealthy Jewish mafia family. Her great uncle he owned the Riviera. I think he was the first one of gambling in New Jersey. He was partners with Meyer Lansky. He had all of these casinos. And I think that kind of corrupt money, I think, set her on a mission of her own that she didn't want to be a part of that. And I think she left her family, left everything. She went from New York City to moving into Brooklyn after a suicide attempt when she was 18. And then she just tried to find meaning and just, like I said, became a school teacher, inner city kids, and social worker, and put herself through Brooklyn College at that point.
What were her concerns for you that you read in her journal in her remaining days?
I think her main concern was that I would always be alone, but that didn't happen. I have an amazing family. I have an incredible daughter.
You said she removed fear from you. How so?
I think when you just give a kid that much love and confidence, I think that helps. Yeah, that is what helped. But the only thing she was afraid of was bugs. And so for years when I would see an insect, other than a cockroach, but when I would see an insect, I would run and scream like a crazy person.
And what do you mean other than a cockroach?
Well, you know, in the apartment in New York, we had roaches all the time. So if you're used to them, you're not afraid of them.
Switching gears a bit here, but I asked you about the fear because it applies to obviously your work, but how much do you agonize like over your work?
But I mean, it's full time. That's all you think about.
All consuming.
Yeah, and I think magicians are very similar. I think most magicians that I'm friends with, they know nothing but magic. I mean, they study, they read, they love art, because that's all cinema, but that's all part of magic, I think. But like, if you ask them about, you know, who won the NBA playoffs, very few, almost none of my magician friends can answer that. I think most magicians, including myself, become all consumed in magic.
What about practicing cards? Because
Non-stop. This is one of the first times, I mean, I'm sitting here for this long without cards, but the only reason why is because I just watched something of myself and I was playing with cards the whole time, and it was really annoying because the sound kept going. So I said, okay, I'm not going to play with cards when I'm doing interviews.
You'll sometimes do it 8 hours a day?
All day, yeah, all the time. Yeah, they just feel amazing. You know, and I love the way cards, I love the moves, the technical part of it, the digital fixation. It's just, yeah, it's just the whole thing.
Can you go an entire day without touching cards?
Oh, very difficult. I think it's also meditative on many levels.
How so?
Just the way, if you see a magician playing with cards and you see other magicians and one guy's like, suddenly you'll see every magician have to pull their cards out because it just feels, even just talking about them, like inching, you know, to grab the deck. But the point is yeah, it's something that just, you know, it's just the fluidity. Yeah, it just feels incredible.
In what ways was Houdini your role model?
That was kind of my education. So I would study books on Houdini, look at images of him, and I think it started to make me dream up what was possible and what could be done and think about magic in a different way, about real versus tricks and stuff like that.
Take me through your process for developing an idea.
So I start with something. I start with a simple idea, or I see an image, and then I'm like, wait, that would be interesting, but it's not magical. But if you took that idea and stripped away this part of it, because Houdini wrote that Mac Norton, who was the guy that was a human aquarium that could store frogs and fish and stuff, this was 100 years ago in his book Miracle Man, I say, wait, so if Houdini's writing about this guy doing it with him on tour, Houdini definitely wasn't fooled. So Houdini really believed that this guy was able to store frogs and fish in his stomach in an aquarium, which is all the water and frogs he would drink in front of the audience. And then he'd bring up all the water and all the frogs and the fish. But if you take that away and you get rid of the messiness of it and you can just produce a frog, that would be really interesting. You know, and so that was the basis of it. And then I'll show you the sword that I had made, and the sword was kind of the beginning of the process. So, actually, can we get that sword? Is it somebody? It's right there on that. It's right below. Thanks. It's right below the, right there on the left. Yeah, that sword. No, to the right. Yeah, that big. And I don't need the holder, just the sword itself. Perfect. Thank you. So, you see, I had this thing made, and the frogs are on it. Right? And then, so in order to get rid of the whole drink the water, bring up the water, I had to figure out how to go in and out of the esophagus so I could bring the frog up without the water. So it became, in my mind, if I could do this sword, then I can figure out how to control my stomach and my esophagus and be able to bring a frog up. So.
And why is that? In your mind, you thought if you could do that, you could do the other?
I don't know, it just felt right. And so, so it went from, his thing was to drink the water, drink it, and then bring all the water out and bring the creatures out. And I started thinking, if you can just do that, where you have nothing, and suddenly there's a frog, that's magical.
So you get the idea, and then from idea to
it's funny,
actually executing.
You don't even doubt it right away. You just assume it's real.
Based on
yeah.
knowledge of you. But yeah, I guess the question is the training that it takes to get to the point where you're actually able to.
Yeah, it was being able to do this was a big part. Could I also have a tissue or a paper towel with just some water, please? Thank you.
Seth had to go getting his hands on it.
That. Yeah, I'll just rinse this because it's been sitting there. You want to try this with? Oh, perfect, thanks. And then I'll just do this. Perfect, thank you. So you want to just see the process?
Yeah, sure.
All right, yeah, I have to kind of lick it. You want to stand up? You can pull it out. Jesus. So I had to learn how to do that.
Oh. Woo. I mean, even when you're doing it, it looks as horrible as it must be. You know, you do some of the stunts sometimes, and
I learned that specifically to do that one trick with the frog. It's that whole thing, the whole process of learning how to do that led to the frog, but then that led to another trick, which was I started thinking, what if I could swallow somebody's ring and then pull it out with a hanger? So then I had to learn how to put a hanger, down my throat, and then I had to develop that trick. So the process is, one thing from an old image of a poster, and then Houdini's book where he writes, this is how the trick, he must have really been doing it. Then it leads to, can I do it? Then it leads to, maybe I should learn how to control the esophagus, so it leads to sword swallow, which leads to me learning how to do that trick with the frog, which then leads to another idea, which is, oh wait, what if I ate somebody's ring, put a hanger in and pulled it out?
Back up a moment. How are you feeling right now, just after having done that? What?
Fine.
Really?
Yeah.
And what about when it's going down?
Yeah, fine. I just haven't practiced or done it for a long time, but yeah, it was quick. Probably if I practiced again for, 3 days, it'd be like nothing.
And when you first start, I'd imagine you don't go all the way down, right? It's
I think the first time I did it was just not that big.
Yeah.
It did go all the way. Yeah, it hits the stomach, the bottom of the stomach, yeah.
And from there to being able to pull a ring out with
Well, then you figure out how to incorporate magic into the idea. And that's what, during early YouTube days when all the tricks were kind of being exposed, I started thinking it would be really interesting to figure out how to do things that are real and combine that with magic, so that way the reality of it makes it just as interesting when the method is revealed as the trick that you're seeing.
And was that realization, did that kind of change everything for you?
No, because I was always doing that stuff, so I always liked the real stuff, even as a kid. That was the magic I was drawn to. So, you know, all the guys on Coney Island that were doing the crazy stuff. So yeah, I think I always, you know what it was? I think I always liked things that were believable. And I think that's from growing up with, you know, a deck of cards, not like a magic kit, you know, because my mother could never buy a magic kit. So giving me a deck of cards that her mother gave to her that had tarot images on it, that led me down the path of learning that you can do amazing things with a deck of cards and simple magic.
And when you'll do these bigger stunts, explain the like mental goals, almost short-term mental goals you'll set for yourself along the way.
You have to give me one.
I mean, it could be...
You're gonna say the ice of the 44 days?
Well, yeah, I mean, those are the examples where I read about you talking about the short-term mental goals, but I think I assumed it was more than just that, you know, in order to kind of get through some of these bigger things, you'll only look so far ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I think that's just the math part of my brain. So I like to break things down into numbers. So if I know I have to do 44 days, which seems like a long time to go without food and just water, it's not as hard to realize 22 days and make that possible. So the first goal is, how do I get here? And for fasting, I'd done all of my stunts previous to that, but the fasting was just the side footnote that wasn't really discussed. But when I was buried alive for a week, I didn't want to eat the week before because I didn't want to have to go to the bathroom in the coffin, obviously. So that was really a 14-day fast. So that kind of led me to loving that part of it, because when you fast, the brain changes again and everything becomes really incredible. You know, all the things that yogis and monks talk about during their fasting and during their cutoff of all the things that you think about, that changes your brain and suddenly become aware of things that you would never think of. So,
and describe what that's like when you're actually in it, by the way.
it just becomes amazing because you realize how much your day is based around your next meal or what you're gonna, you know, and that consumes a lot of time. Like, oh, where am I gonna go to dinner? What am I gonna have for breakfast? What am I gonna have for lunch? And when you take that away, you realize that you're fully functional. But not only that, now your brain is thinking about things that you never thought about, you know, and even just the way you see colors. You know, when you do an extreme fast and you take away everything, suddenly you're aware of colors that you never even paid attention to. You look at the sky and you're like, oh my God, you know, so it triggers something that's incredible. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to London and do a long fast. And the whole stunt will be only about the water fast. So, and that became what I researched and looked into and found documentations of what could be done. And I'd known that I'd already done this long, plus I'd tested and practiced doing fasts. I was like, okay, this is doable. And I'm going to push it just to this point because I think I can come back with no permanent damage.
And did you?
Yeah, for the most part.
What's for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my org, I have the New England Journal of Medicine thing. They kept all the documentation somewhere here, but it discussed like all the repercussions on the body and the long-term effects on some level. Oh, yeah, we could look at it after, I guess. But yeah, you know, I think my heart wall, my bone mass index, everything had decreased by about 33%. I lost 60 pounds in 44 days, and yeah, it was intense. But I feel like I did get most recovery other than my metabolism. I feel like it always thinks I'm going into starvation mode now, maybe, so my body reacts quicker when I stop eating, or when I start eating, I can gain and lose really fast.
And you said that before and said like that there's no way of actually proving that, but it's been since that point that you're...
I think so, yeah, I think so.
What did the recovery process entail from that?
Well, the doctors were skeptical. Even my own doctor, who was like a top starvation expert, who wrote the paper with me, and then he wrote the paper. He just added me because I gave him my thoughts. But he was skeptical. He thought I was taking glucose or something, or electrolytes, but it wasn't. It was just pure H2O.
And they wanted you to at some point,
Well,
right?
my magician collaborator wanted me to, and I was like, no, I want to do it this way. So I did it my way. At the end of the stunt, when I went to the hospital, phosphate levels went really fast, and I almost went into shock and probably could have died. And that's when the guy went, oh wow, all the stuff he said is real. This is the refeeding syndrome, and then he wrote a paper about that, which is how lots of people actually that are bulimic or starving themselves, they actually, become at real risk once they start to feed them. So he had a good collection of data and used that information to publish a paper.
But that was the most dangerous part for you felt like, when it came time to refeed?
No, I don't know. I think that was the most dangerous part for just the team. For me, at around day 40, my heart started feeling really strange. I kept thinking I was going to go into cardiac arrest, things. So there was an extreme risk based on what I was feeling. But then I got a message from somebody that was outside that brought a sign that said, God is love, and that was the last thing my mother said. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make it.
And your body started consuming
organ
walls, right?
Because you would think it just goes after the fat, but it doesn't. So it goes after muscle tissue and fat, and then it switches to your organs, and it goes, so your organs start to decrease in size. And you really start to feel the muscle tissues when your body's eating it. It really becomes painful everywhere. And I don't recommend anybody to do an extended fast at that level. I think a few days is great.
63 hours in a block of ice. Why do you call that
I think
your most challenging stunt?
I think it was meant to be longer, and I think I showed up late to the ice or something like that. And then the ice wasn't ready, and then so everything was backwards on that. So, but that was the hardest one by far, and I think it was because standing up the entire time, plus the radiation of the cold. Even though it was a warm November, it was like 68, so the air being pumped through was, at a room temperature, but that made the ice continuously drip on me. And then you're fighting your own brain. It's like one half of you saying, go to sleep, or you're gonna die. The other half is like, no, I have to achieve this goal. And it becomes like a battle against yourself. And then the brain just gives out. And then I started having hallucinations while I was awake, but I couldn't tell whether this is real, is this real life, or am I dreaming with my eyes open? And that was the case. I was having nightmares and dreams while my eyes were open. Starting at hour 55, so it was probably only like 8 or 9 hours left. But they're long, those hours. Yeah.
And a couple minutes passed and you thought it was hours, right?
A couple seconds passed and I thought it was hours. Yeah, probably like time shifts. Everything is so different. The way it worked is, I think it was like 4:02, or I don't remember the time, but the stunt was supposed to end at 9 or 10. And it's 4:02 and I see a guy through the ice. By the way, then Fox did a whole special, by the way, saying that I wasn't in the block of ice and I had a twin switching up and down with me. And my doorman watched it and he actually believed, and he's like, was that you? It's like, Eddie, you looked at me through, yes, you said hi to me.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, but they said you were switching. I was like, but then where's my twin? But anyway, the next special is that we never landed on the moon, so I was like, okay. But anyway, so the guy is outside, it's 4:02, or whatever the time is, and I said, I go, what time is it? And somebody out there goes, 4:02. So I'm like, okay, 2, that means I have like 5 or 6 hours until this is over. I have to wait till 9 or 10. Okay, so I wait. I'm trying to like get this clock to move. So I wait for 2 hours. Wait before I ask anybody again. So I look out, I see, it's blurry with the ice. So I look at, I see somebody go, what time is it? And the guy goes, 4:04, whatever it was. And it was the same guy. And I was like, And that's when I think the brain just went crazy.
Really? Do you remember what
Then I
was going on
started
there?
seeing people in the ice, and I was communicating to people, and I was hearing voices, and the hallucinations just went crazy.
So when did your team realize you were in trouble?
When the guy that was working on the stunt, because I said it was a warm November, so the ice was dripping a lot, so he was vacuuming under the ice and hit the catheter, and that was the beginning of like downhill. He feels so bad to this day, but it's not his fault. So I always say, if there was one thing I wouldn't do, but now there's a few, but if there was one I would never redo, it's the ice. For nothing in the world would I do that. Because I have a daughter and I don't want to kill myself, I also wouldn't do the 44 days. The buried alive, I feel like anybody could do that. The breath hold, I do it still all the time, against all advice, because I have a heart condition.
What's the heart condition?
Just I have 50% stenosis, so I get half the supply blood to the heart because my right coronary artery takes an irregular path between my pulmonary artery and my aorta, which reduces blood flow to the heart, which may also be the reason I can hold my breath, because maybe the body compensates and I have a higher red blood cell, I don't know. But so there may be some connection to me being able to hold my breath to that birth defect that I have. But when I meet with all of the cardiologists, they say you cannot hold your breath, you will die. They've been saying this now for 10 years. No, since 2014, I was 15.
The sleep deprivation thing.
That one I could not do.
Okay, because I was going to ask
that one I backed out of.
in earlier interviews, you had said a goal of yours was to break that record.
Yeah,
a million seconds,
a million
which
seconds
is
would break
a little
the record.
more than 11 and a half days. When
it was
did
11.56, I think, would be a million seconds.
When did that change?
I hired the team. I had like the top guy out of Stanford, whose name is actually Dr. Dement. And he's the one that covered Randy Gardner that did the 11 days, but it was not documented in the first 4 days, so who knows exactly. But anyway, when him and the team came, we started playing with sleep deprivation. I'd gotten up to 5 days or something. But he said, if you have micro sleeps, we're not going to count it. So it means if you do that, it doesn't count. So it's like, just based on the difficulty and based on that statement and based on Peter Tripp, who was a radio DJ that did it in Times Square. Ironically, his name is Peter Tripp, and he actually tripped out at the end of his week-long telethon where he stayed awake and moved away, never spoke to any of his family. Yeah, it changed his brain, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so that one was the one that seemed like, this one I don't think I can actually pull that off. I'm also that guy that just falls asleep anywhere, anytime.
Right. But I want to ask you, in terms of stunts you have done, the breath holding on Oprah, what's going through your mind?
Before Oprah, obviously I wanted to be sure that I wasn't going to fail. So I worked diligently with a great team, had pulmonary experts, had neurovascular surgeons, had doctors, had free divers, had everybody with me. But I was in a pool with all the telemetry hooked up, and I was doing a breath hold, and I'd gotten to 20 minutes and 2 seconds, but my heart had dropped to 8 beats per minute, and they thought that I was gonna suddenly go into cardiac arrest and die, so they pulled me out of the water, and I was like, why did you do that? It was like I was in an amazing, it's like incredible. So anyway, I had done the 2002, so even that gave me the variance for when I did Oprah, even if things were crashing or not going according to plan, which they weren't, I knew that I could still do at least 10% more than what the goal was. So I felt comfortable that I could succeed with the record at the time, which was 16:32.
What's the longest you've done?
2002. 20 minutes and 2 seconds, yeah.
Oh, all right, so you're on Oprah now, which is much different because, this is the national television program.
Well, I'll tell you what the issues were. So it wasn't that, but what the issue was I wanted to use a sphere because that image is, I thought, just so much better. And she was like, okay, we could ship the sphere, we'll set that up. But I also wanted telemetry so they could watch the heart rate, which I thought would be for safety, but also interesting to see what the heart does, right? Yeah. So we had a pulmonary expert come in and I was hooked up, but the machine, they left it right next to my ear, which was annoying and awful and made the heart rate go quicker, and then I had ischemia of the heart, so it would go high, then low. Top of that, because for the audience, I wanted to be facing this way. So I was used to training where I just float face down, which makes it much easier. But now I wanted to be this way, so I had to put my feet into these things because I had a wetsuit on to keep me from going up. And I had to use extra energy to keep the body down. So suddenly I was like, oh no, this is live and we're in the middle of it and things aren't gonna be right. At one point, I didn't think I was gonna make it. I was sure that I was gonna black out and that would be it. You don't die from a blackout, by the way. You black out, and this is how the Navy SEALs are trained, is they're blacked out underwater, and then that way they're not afraid of drowning, and then they're brought up to the top and they're brought back. So, yeah, but all of the conditions kind of made this very difficult.
And at the halfway point, you don't think you're gonna
I didn't think I was gonna make it, no chance.
What was the most painful part of it?
It did start to get really painful, but I think at like 15 minutes or something like that, it started to get really, really uncomfortable. I mean...
And what's the feeling?
Well, first I purge really hard on O2 for 23 minutes. That gets rid of all the CO2 and it loads you up. And then what happens is I'm tingling everywhere, the fingers, ears, the nose, the lips, everything feels very strange. And I ride that out. So 4 minutes in, it kind of feels like I'm just beginning. And then you kind of cruise for a little bit, but I had that issue with the feet trying to hold the body. And then I had the issue of this, with the beeps, kind of hearing your heart rate and knowing that it's going way higher than it should. The other thing is when your eyes are closed, you don't use any, the less your brain works, the more efficient, the brain uses a lot of oxygen. So the brain is the more you can put it, you can take away everything, even closing your eyes, the more efficient you are at holding your breath. So between the beeping and the brain working and the feet, it became really difficult. To one point, I didn't think I was going to make it, but as soon as I got to, I think around the mark of what the goal was, which I think it was 16:32, it was 13, and then it was a hypothetical 10 minutes that was a rumor. There was no documentation of it, but then I believed that it was truthful because it was a bunch of free divers that said, yeah, there's somebody held for 10 minutes. And then I did it myself in a pool and got to 15 minutes with my team underwater. And then I started to think that, yeah, you could go for almost 20 minutes. Now, there's somebody I think did 24 minutes and 3 seconds underwater, which is crazy. Yeah.
And you thought you were going to go into cardiac arrest?
Yeah.
At the end there?
Yeah. But then when I got closer to the 16 plus mark, I was like, okay, I'm good.
What happened to the Brooklyn Bridge?
I started training for that, dropping just repetitively over and over. And I did, let's see, I have a picture of it. Show you what I did to that. I could find it. Did after a bunch of jumps, I'd kind of done this to my arms.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
And where were you jumping from there?
You can see, I guess, here. Yeah. So once that's, I said, well, this is.
Oh, and that's from how high up that you're jumping?
Not even a fraction of the Brooklyn Bridge height. But I'm still, I'm still in love with falling from heights into water. I think the Brooklyn Bridge I don't think it's worth the repercussions, number one. Plus, you don't want some kid seeing that and thinking it's okay to do. So there's multiple reasons. And we started thinking, okay, what if we put a helicopter next to it? And the guy that's coaching me, Dana Kunze, who jumped 172 feet into water, ABC Wide World of Sports, everybody else was pulled out in a stretcher after that. They pulled the event, and he said, no more of this. But he looks at that Brooklyn Bridge, he's like, I could get you to do that like nothing. So for him, it would be simple to, he thinks, coach, but I think not.
The kerosene and water in your mouth, the moment you were, I think, performing for Robert De Niro and Chef Nobu.
Yeah.
That's arguably the most danger you've ever felt you were in, like in that actual moment, right?
I still think that's like the most dangerous, because just drinking that much, kerosene or lamp oil, which is, they filter they use chemicals to get rid of the odor. So it's even more dangerous than kerosene, but drinking it and then having it go in your stomach, the problem is the oil residue. So there's always some, so I've stopped doing that one where I drink it. Now I just put it in my mouth, but I don't even feel comfortable with that anymore.
Why not?
I just think putting that kind of stuff, I have a friend, Johnny Fox, who was a sword swallower and a fire eater, and we got esophageal cancer, and it was a bad death. So, yeah.
When you were doing that though, like that time, what are you thinking as it?
Well, I had watched that act since I was a kid. It was a guy named Haji Ali that would drink a big glass of kerosene and a gallon of water. The kerosene would float on top of his stomach, and then he would blow the kerosene out onto a fire and make an enormous fire. So it was like he was like a human dragon. And then he would use the water to put out the fire. So I was like, whoa, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So I always wanted to learn that. It took me forever to learn it. But the hard part wasn't drinking the kerosene or the flammable. And then I had somebody make me one. His name was Dr. Zeller. He made Zell Gel, the famous gel that prevents you from, when you put your skin on fire, from actually feeling the fire itself, from the heat. So I guess you do feel heat, but it protects you from burning yourself. So he was making me a mixture that was supposedly, jet fuel is the cleanest. So it was kind of like a jet fuel. And then this guy, Dr. Zeller, suddenly died of some weird thing. And so I was like, ugh. So anyway, I haven't figured out the solution, because I still have the fire on tour. But I'm trying to figure out if there's an alcohol base, like a Bacardi 151, which is very flammable, that I can drink, not swallow, and then blow the fire out. The fire comes back really quick. So anyway, I'm working on that for this new show. I'm trying to figure out a solution.
Have you ever been, when you've had the kerosene down in you, like freaking out a little bit?
Yeah, when I did it at Harrison Ford's house. It makes your heart and your body just goes really weird. Yeah, so I think that was probably the last time that I drank that much kerosene.
And what do you do
now
when
it's
you?
Just minimal amounts.
Like, what do you do when you freak out?
No, I mean your
like,
body, you feel it. Like your heart just starts going crazy, and you're sweating. Your body's reacting. Like, what are you putting this in my system for?
And do you think you're in trouble in that moment?
Nah. I mean, I also have that hypochondria thing, so sometimes I assume something, but I've been through that so much as a kid that eventually now I'm not so paranoid of it.
Last stunt I wanted to bring up, the bullet catch, which you've done on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
I believe your head of production temporarily quit.
Yeah, my top magician consultant, he said, if you do this again, I'm not helping you at all. And then just all the gun violence and everything, it made me reluctant. I'm like, no, forget this. It's not worth it. And then that magician, Chung Ling Soo, he died doing the bullet catch on stage, and he was an American magician. You throw me that book right there. Glorious to say, yeah. So this is Chung Ling Soo, and this guy, this is him, Billy Robinson, and this is him as Chung Ling Soo, and he played a Chinese conjurer because 100 years ago, if you were from China and a magician, you're very mysterious, very interesting, so he wouldn't speak. And he would do the bullet catch on stage, and I thought it was so nice the way he did it, though. It was so cool looking. He would have here, I'll show you. It's such a, the way he presented it was so cool. He'd have them shoot him from the audience, and it was like a path that went out into the audience straight towards him. Let's see if I could find that. And then what happened was one day he did the bullet catch on stage, and again, remember, he never spoke. They thought he was a Chinese conjurer. They couldn't speak any English.
Yeah.
And he was in London performing the bullet catch, and the bullet catch went wrong, struck him, and he yelled, "Someone lower the curtain, I've been shot." And suddenly he sounded like an American. And the whole audience laughed. They thought he was kidding. They thought it was funny. Then he dropped dead on stage in front of everybody. And see how he did it? It did look so cool, you see?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that story about Chung Ling Su's bullet catch and the story about Robert Houdin. There's such a rich history of it, so I wanted to do it, but...
And presumably there's even less opportunity for precision.
Well, he did it as a trick.
Yeah.
He didn't really catch it. So the guy that I studied with was named Carl Skeens, and he did it on That's Incredible. And he had his wife shoot him in a metal cup in his mouth, and he had done it hundreds of times, and just one time he said when they were fighting, she missed a little bit and sliced through his face. but he, obviously 12 magicians that died were faking it. He was fine other than that one time. So I had him help me figure out a way to do it for real, which is put a metal cup in your mouth, have a bullet shot into the metal cup. And then I started thinking, but if I'm gonna do this on stage, I think I have to do it to myself. And I started thinking, if we put a string onto the trigger, put a laser on a scope, and then, you know.
What was the scariest part of the times you've done it?
I think that the scary part is before the fact, not when you're doing it. When you're first trying to actually solidify the idea, I think that's kind of, you know, you're like, how am I gonna do this? You know, so the assembly of it. But it was like when I did the balloon flight, when my daughter came, the whole thing was dialed in and safe and perfect, so there would be no risk of really anything. We worked really hard to get there. But leading up to it, I had to do almost 500 jumps, and it had to be done quickly, so we were doing 10, 12 a day. And yeah, I had to get a pro rating so I could jump over a congested area.
And you aren't insured for much
I couldn't be insured for any of that, actually. So until the real stunt, but the whole 500 jumps was on me. So the scary part was the off the books part that I was doing on my own. Ironically, no injuries whatsoever. The first jump that I did recreationally, like a year after the balloon stunt, I was flying with a friend. He was holding on to me so another guy could get a picture of us. And then when I came back, I was so far away from a good landing spot that I landed on something just double broke and triple ripped the ligaments on the ankle. So the big injury that I had was just on a recreational jump, but it was also the one time that I didn't treat it very seriously. You know, I wasn't focused and I wasn't prepared. I didn't have my equipment, didn't have but what I had done the 500 jumps with. So it just shows you, it's like, you know, that level of focus and seriousness has to be applied at all times.
Health issues you have today associated with your career?
I think metabolism took a hit, probably from all the breath holding. They say short-term memory loss, but short-term memory rebuilds itself apparently. And then I would guess that the unknowns from eating glass, kerosene, these things, probably there's a lot of residual effects that I don't really know about yet.
And on the munching on glass, I mean,
it's probably not a good idea.
Well, I mean, you have issues today, right?
The other thing is there's like a chemical in the glass. So the chemical that they use to make glass, that's also going into your body. So not the best idea.
And explain why you moved from the hand to the bicep with the ice pick.
Just the scar tissue that was happening in my hand, the amount of scar tissue was becoming, I would have like sharp shooting pains in nerves, so I just decided to switch to, you know.
You've said before you think you're going to die in your 60s, or high likelihood.
No, well, what I said is if I was betting as an insurance guy, betting on, life expectancy of, first of all, Houdini died at 52. A bunch of magicians did die at the age of 52, but he was very, extreme and really pushed himself. So,
I mean, you're no different.
I think I do push myself a lot, but now that I have a daughter, I don't even want that risk anymore. So the way I approach things is very different, very calculated.
You'd said in an article, I'd like to figure out how to be happy more.
Oh, well, sure. I'm not a bouncing up happy type person, but that doesn't mean I'm also a depressed person.
Right.
You know? Yeah, but sure. I'm not that type of person that walks around like,
Okay, what made you realize you'd like to be happy more?
No, I just mean, there's so much to be, grateful for, right? Like you could be in an extreme situation where everything seems really difficult, but you could take that and use it to build and become stronger and look at it as like, oh, I'm lucky that I went through this versus, oh, this is terrible, life is unfair. So it's two approaches. So I'd like to take any situation that things are difficult and kind of use it as like, oh, great, let me learn how to become stronger. Let me learn how to become better. Let me learn,
You said long ago you're reluctant to let people in or get close to people.
Yeah, I think that's just childhood and, the world around and that type of thing makes you, a little, afraid. And then probably also the loss of my mother. There's another part of me that's afraid that if I do feel that way and then somebody abandons me, there's like that great devastation. So I think that combination of things probably led to, keeping, guard up on certain levels.
In what ways do you see it come out in you?
I don't know. It's everything, And then the other thing is, which is, I think, just as a magician, you're also in a world where you're not like, you work on things, but you're like very guarded about who you share the things with,
Right.
So you're very, very protective over ideas, So I think it all it's hand in hand.
But there was a period where that upset you, right? Like the inability to let people in more?
I don't know.
How would you say the risks you take impact relationships with significant others?
When Dessa was 1, I did the electrified thing, and then that was the longest break that I ever had, which was almost a decade before I did another stunt. So the way I think about things changed as soon as I had a daughter. Previous to that, I wasn't afraid, if a shark bites my leg off, so be it. So before that, I was a little more, willing to take a risk. Whereas now, I'll make sure that there's, a cage close enough by that if the shark starts to come at me, I could get in the cage, right?
What about on the dating front? Like, what's it?
Yeah, I
I
think dating a magician is for a start already strange. I think a magician is we keep all of our walls up and our world is all consumed by magic. So I think that makes it complicated. Yeah.
Do you think that makes it hard?
Yeah, probably. But I think it's, a complicated, long rabbit, hole to try to figure out, but sure. I think being a magician, number one, is you're guarded, you're secretive, you're reluctant to let people in on some level. That's just the nature of that. And I think that the reason people become a magician is because they already have that brain chemistry, like they've already built that wiring of, I'm going to stay alone, I'm going to practice magic. It's weird. I don't care if the other kids don't accept me because I have my cards, I have my magic. So I think that magicians have in common. I think it's similar to like comedians in some level, or it's like it's its own world. Mm-hmm. But you feel great when you're with other magicians, because you have that same language, that same communication. And that communication is about the cards or the numbers or the logic or the science or the creativity, and that's where all the energy and focus goes, I think.
How much desire, if any, do you have to one day get married?
I mean, open to everything.
I mean, is that something you want for your life, or
let's put it like
indifferent?
this: I'm the first person that cries over any romantic movie. So like any movie that comes on, including Grease, I was showing it to my daughter and I just start crying. She's like, "Why are you crying, Papa?" I'm also the first one that tells my brother, everybody, marry her. She's amazing, just marry her. So yeah, I believe in all of that stuff. I think I'm just, there's a part of me that's guarded and afraid of being abandoned and things like that. And then again, I think that goes to the whole magician's construct. Wait, that's a call.
Sure.
Hold on. Hey. Say hi.
Hello. I'm grilling your dad with questions.
Are you gonna come over? You're gonna come over in a bit?
Yeah. Just what pair of shoes do you think I need to take for the airport tomorrow?
I think the new ones are good.
So I bring the Nikes?
Yeah, perfect.
So I bring but in your suitcase?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so we'll be there in 30 minutes anyways.
Okay, perfect. All right,
Love
je
you.
t'aime. Love you. Bye.
Fatherhood impacted you how?
The greatest experience of my entire life. It gives you a purpose. And it's funny because I used to see people showing pictures of their kids. Now I'm that guy. There's nothing greater in life. It's our ultimate purpose, right? Survival and reproduction, according to Freud, the ultimate productive, that's it. So doing magic tricks and all this stuff, sure, it's entertaining and fun, but no, having a daughter is the whole point of life and existence. So yeah, it's the most fulfilling, rewarding experience that I'll ever have. And by the way, it's hard to continue doing magic because I just want to be with my daughter, So it's like any time that I'm doing something, like even now, it's like this is time that I could be with my daughter. So it's everything is, but we spend a lot of time, so it's okay. But I'm just saying, yeah, that's the greatest feeling and experience that you can, that for me personally, that you could ever have in life.
It's the only other moment in the interview where you've been a little touched, like talking about something.
But sure, yeah. What was the other moment?
Oh, talking a little bit about your parents.
Okay.
It changed you in what ways that you weren't expecting?
I mean, in every way. The things shift. What you think was important before is no longer important. So the main thing that's important is just being the best dad that I can be and being there for her and teaching her everything that I love.
I know how you do it.
No, you don't.
I know you put it there.
You knew that? How did you know?
You're
a magician? Watching her grow and learn and supporting that's my priority now. Of course, the work is important and doing magic I still love. It's my passion, it's my drive and my focus, of course. But now that's not the only, now there's something much more important.
To what extent was it at all challenging figuring out that balance?
I think you just naturally, it just happens. You just become that. I don't think you have to figure it out. Although there was a book that was really good called Nurture Shock, recommended highly for anybody if they want to learn about the psychology of raising a kid in a way that, so with Nurture Shock, what they say in the beginning of the book, which is amazing, I think Columbia and Harvard did a test and they gave 1,000 kids the exact same tests and 500 were split in one group, 500 in the other. They were all pretty much on the same level, which is why they were put into this test. And the 500 kids that were rewarded on their achievements, like, you're great, that was amazing. And then the other 500 kids were rewarded on their work. And what happened was on the second test, the 500 kids that were told they were great and their achievements were so amazing, they suddenly declined on the next test, where the kids that were rewarded for working hard, they increased, they went up immediately. And the reason why was because when you compliment somebody's work, they can just keep getting better. There's no end to it. But when you compliment somebody's achievements, like, oh, you're great, that's amazing, suddenly they're afraid to not be great. And so suddenly they're more hesitant, reluctant to get something wrong, whereas the other kids, they're getting complimented on the work. So that was like the opening of the book, and just little things like that, that helped me understand just psychology in a way that that I wouldn't have normally thought of it.
How would you feel if she got into magic?
Great, but I support anything that she wants to do, and she's so amazing and so talented, and she is into magic. She's incredible at it.
Well, that's because I've seen her obviously.
When
in
she
some of your
comes,
work.
I'll show you guys something, but we're doing it just as practice right now, so there won't be any.
Well, the reason I ask because in some, I've seen her in some of your work, but then in some conversations you've had, you're like, you don't want that life for her.
No, she'll whatever she decides. I'm super supportive.
I want to touch on some celebrity interaction. First, Mike Tyson's people accidentally taking your suitcase.
Oh, amazing! Running into Mike at that point was incredible.
And you're how old?
I don't remember, but young. And it was like my first trip to LA, and brown Toomey suitcases were the thing, and so there was like 100 getting thrown into his cars, and mine was missing. And I say, I think you guys might have taken one of my bags. You go knock on that limo. And I knock on the window, and the thing rolls down. It's Mike. He's like, you got a problem? And I was like, no, Mike, I used to print you on my shirt. And he goes, jump in. And so I sit in the limo, and in the ride back to his hotel, I was doing magic to him the whole time. And he said, I wasn't meant to be the heavyweight champ. I was too short. My reach isn't good. He's like, but I had nothing to lose, and therefore I had everything to gain. And he's like, he gave me little amazing bits of wisdom, which is like, you work really hard. You don't look back. You focus on the big goal. It was amazing. Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Like,
great.
You guys were close one point.
Yeah,
then you weren't.
But he was amazing. Very generous. He was so nice. He hosted my first show. He was incredible.
The articles read like
No,
you didn't like
amazing.
the association with him,
No,
when you were like
it's
coming
an
up
honor
or
to be
something.
associated with. That guy's amazing. Yeah.
Trump.
Great.
You
yeah,
guys.
I met him on a handshake, and I did magic to him at some party. I was like 18 or 19 or whatever it was. And I was like, one day I'm going to do stunts. Can I use your land? He's like, yeah, here, take my number. And he gave me his card. And then cut to a few years later, I called that card. It was like 8/32/2000, I think. I don't remember, but it was. So they, hello, we're Donald Trump. So I said, this is David Blaine, I'm a magician. He told me I could call him when I needed. And so he jumps on the phone, and I was like, remember you said I could use your land to do a stunt? I was thinking about doing the stunt Buried Alive that Houdini died before he got the chance to do, which is that stunt. He died beforehand. And he said, yeah, I'll send you my driver. And back then, having a driver was a big deal, right? There was no Ubers or anything. I sent my driver, and his driver took me around to all of his spots, and I saw this great West Side Highway location. I was like, I want that one. And they were like, okay, it's yours.
Madonna.
Amazing.
You guys dated, right?
No, we were very close, and we're still close. And what was amazing was early on, I would watch how she builds shows. So I would go to the museum with her and things like that. And I would see her looking at all the art and all the photographs and just writing little thoughts for what she's going to put into her shows. And yeah, she's an incredible, amazing, powerful woman. I was lucky to become friends with. Still to this day, it's always inspiring, and always her last show. She made a music, almost like a musical, and it was she did it so much and it was so hard, but it was unbelievable. The amount of thought and processes, very few people can do that, in the whole, very few. She creates and does her whole thing from the bottom up, and even watching her build her show, like the way she checks every little detail, every nut and bolt on the stage, on all the props, it's crazy. It's amazing.
President Bush and buttering up the Secret Service beforehand.
I stole his watch. I think we were in China, and I was at a gig. He was at a gig, and I did this watch steal. And
but buttering up the Secret Service beforehand was a key part of that.
Yeah,
for
getting
you, right?
these guys ready, so when I start handling or doing whatever, they wouldn't think I was gonna stab him, do something crazy. So yeah, I got them comfortable with the idea that I can grab and manipulate people. Look, here you go, move here, come here, So that was great.